The wind sang a mournful tune atop the frozen battlements of Castle Black. A low, keening whistle that threaded through the merlons and rattled the chains of the great winch as though some unseen harpist plucked at iron strings. Lord Commander Corgelli, broad-shouldered, graying at the temples, cloak clasped by a fist-shaped brooch of jet, stood with gloved hands braced upon the ice-slick stone, staring northward into a night too clear for comfort. The sky shimmered with pale curtains of green and violet, the aurora rippling like silk banners caught by soundless tempests. Yet beneath that celestial dance, the forest of the haunted lands lay unnaturally still, as if every creature from snow hare to shadowcat were holding its breath. For 3,000 years, the wall had been more than rubble and ruin. Carved into that colossal rampart was the promise of safety, the whispered assurance that the ancient enemy would forever remain a fireside story. Wardings older than the Andal Kings, older even than the first men's forgotten gods, clung to every frozen yard, or so the chronicles claimed. But chronicles could lie, Corgile reflected, and even the truest oaths might wither in the mouths of dying men. He glanced down. The glow of the watch torches painted the wall's crown in jittery halos, though fewer than half the sconces burned tonight. Oil was scarce, and the brothers argued over every cask. At his elbow, Maester Harmon tugged his fur-lined hood higher, puffing clouds of white. The maester's chain, copper and iron, blackened silver. A single link of electrum, chimed against the scroll case clutched to his chest. "We must send the ravens at once," Harmon urged, voice cracked with cold. "I will not proclaim doom on rumor." The Lord Commander's breath steamed. "We hold fast. We watch. That is our charge." "Rumor," the maester's eye twitched. "Corgile, you felt it with me." It was as if something loosened. Corgile remembered. A muted shiver beneath his boots at first light, like distant thunder rumbling inside the ice, followed by a whispering crack that raced along the parapet before dying in the depths. The wall groaned often. Old ice moves, old ice settles. Yet this had been different. Not the living creak of age, but the brittle snap of bonds unfastened. "Even so," he said, "words spoken cannot be sheathed like swords. The South is ablaze already with its own quarrels. Give them frost coasts, and they will call us liars or madmen." A shadow stirred behind the Lord Commander. Ser Dinis Malister of the Shadow Tower had crossed the bridge at Corgelli's summons, a lean, austere man in battered plate, darkened by countless repairs. "Madmen, perhaps," Malister said, "but liars? They will not doubt long should the others walk again. Better to raise the cry while hands are free to heft blades, not after they're too numb to grasp the hilt." "Nyar." Corgile exhaled a plume. "You speak as if we face the long night reborn. There are no White Walkers in this age. Only raiders and dire tales." Malister did not flinch. "Then humor an old knight's superstition, Commander. If mere raiders lurk beyond that tree line, why has every fire in the fist of the first men gone dark? Sir Lothar reports the nightwoods themselves glow with blue-white motes like embers in reverse." Maester Harmon thrust the scroll at Corgelli. "And this, my last essay of the wall's hidden wards. Glyphs that once bled warmth reacted to my oils with nothing. Cold stone, inert, as though wiped clean. Now." Corgile stared at the maester's trembling hands, seeing more fear than Quilgi. He had held command for 14 years, seen wildling kings rise and fall, marched hard against snow blindness and famine, buried friends beneath cairns of frost. But fear in a maester's eyes set his guts to churning. Maesters trusted in order, in logic and law. If Harmon had surrendered those bastions, something grievous prowled their margins. "Very well," the Lord Commander said at last. "I will write." His voice scraped low. "But my words will be measured." The Seven Kingdoms smolder. Robert Baratheon raises banners against his king, and half the realm weighs fealty with greed. To speak of sorcery failing while warlords measure each breath in steel. "Might unite them?" Malister broke in. Common peril forges common cause, or shatter them faster. Corgyle turned. Tywin Lannister has yet to choose a side. The Reach prepares its harvest of arms. Targaryen dragons have been ash since Summerhall, but a prince's pride fuels every spark. Suppose these great lords hear that the North may pour horrors past the wall. Do you think they'll march northward? No. They'll burn the Neck, Saltmoat Cailin, and retreat behind their castles while we freeze alone. Maester Harmon closed his eyes as if seeing farther for it. There is another who must know, regardless of politics. Lord Eddard Stark. A hush settled. Corgyle felt the wind stilling almost kindly against his face. Ned Stark, second son until Winter's cruel cunning slew his father and elder brother, had left Castle Black scarcely a year ago to answer the call of Lord Robert's banners. He was sworn to battle the Mad King, chained by oaths of friendship and the burning memory of Brandon's strangled death. Yet Stark had served as Corgilly's own steward before that call, knew the wall's groans and the taste of the broth on poor days, had walked the vaults where secret fires warded runes no living man could read. Ned would believe, Mallister said. Corgyle breathed, softer. And he would ride for us. The aurora flared, torches guttering like startled hearts. At the forest edge below, a flicker of blue, far too bright for frostlight, winked out. Then another. Corgyle leaned over the escarpment, squinting. It was as though phantoms strode, each footfall displacing starlight. Send the ravens, he said. All of them. Maester Harmon zagged in relief. All, Corgyle repeated. North, south, east, west. If the gods themselves still watch, let them heed. And Harmon. Seal Stark's missive with the black stone. He will know its meaning. Namtermin. Deep in the rookery's gloom, the birds beat a frantic tattoo, rustling straw and ivory pinions, while Harmon and two junior stewards lashed small rolls of parchment to thin legs. One by one they launched into the night. Feathers vanished into the dark like flakes of soot tossed into a great furnace. Hours later, as false dawn limned the world in pearl and pewter, the wall shuddered again. Men roused from bunk and cell clutched spears that felt suddenly fragile. Brother Will the Piper heard what he swore was a call of distant horns. No wildling conch, but a note colder, older carved from Sheetgis and sorrow. When the sun climbed, it found Castle Black draped in a hush that felt nearer sacred. Brothers labored double watches, eyes pinned to the horizon instead of the yard where recruits huffed through drills. Smithy coals burned low. Every scrap of charcoal was diverted to forging arrowheads of dragonglass dug from forgotten caches in the gorge. The wall's garrison numbered less than 1,000, and half of those were stewards and builders. But in the small hours, desperation breeds invention. They coaxed blades from black glass that pulsed inner rainbows, edged kitchen cleavers in obsidian, fitted spear points with shards so thin one could read letters through their veil. Still, the wall groaned, with each mournful rasp sounding less like settling ice, and more like a giant cracking his knuckles before war. South of the Neck, the world remained deaf to such tremors. Storm's End seethed with banners black and gold. Robert Baratheon gathered his strength, laughter booming in the courtyard, while armorers hammered bright mail and smiths stamped the crown-rack sigil on spear butt and breastplate. But even laughter of that pitch could not drown rumor. Whispers spread faster than plague, rivers running thick and red north of the Gift. Dead men walking where snow lay thin, a rent in the wall so wide a mammoth might pass unblooded. Robert scoffed when first he heard it. Ghost stories to fen honest hearts, he told Jon Arryn, swigging ale. Madmen north of the wall spin tall tales whenever winter nips their toes. Jon Arryn, patrician, austere, shook his head. This came by raven marked with black stone and wax pressed by Maester's ring. Castle Black seals few letters so. He handed the scroll across the war table. Robert squinted, frown deepening, lips shaping words he scarcely dared voice aloud. Read it to me, he muttered. Your eyes are keener. Arryn unfolded, smoothing vellum. Lord Eddard Stark, unforeseen peril, threatens the realms of men. The wall's enchantments falter. Signs ancient, as the dawn heralds speak of shadows returning. Send steel and fire. Remember your vow. Aaron looked up. It bears Lord Commander Corgalay's sigil. Robert scratched his beard. Steel and fire, he asks. While I muster to unseat a bloody tyrant, I've not coin enough for 2 wars. Caitlin Tully, Anne's betrothed, though yet unwed, stood nearby, hands clasped at her middle. Auburn hair glimmered like sunset upon copper. Ned would ride, she said softly. Eh? Robert agreed, brows knitting. He would, 7 hells take him, and leave me with a castle of paper promises. Oh. Aaron folded the missive again. Better to heed the night's watch than to ignore and later curse our own deafness. A token force, perhaps. 100 spears. 12 pyromancers. Pyromancers? Robert barked a laugh. I'd sooner trust a Dornishman with my wine than a pyromancer with wildfire. Yet wildfire burns even through winter sleet, Aaron answered. Robert's humor dimmed. Fine. Or a token. I choose men sworn to me, and none from the Vale. Rouse the Stormlands riders. We send them north, after we smash the Tyrell sortie near Summerhall. He paced, stirring dust. Tell them to carry Baratheon colors. Remind old Corgyle the realm remembers its debts. Caitlin spoke again, voice water-soft but insistent. My Lord Robert, let me beg Ned attend that escort. If doom truly stirs in the haunted forest, he will bear witness, and Castle Black will need a Stark more than banners. Robert stopped, hands on hips. He studied her, saw the subtle tremor behind her calm. They all knew Ned's heart, loyal as Brandsteel, stubborn as Northman stone. Should the wall fall, Winter's first bite would sink into his own blood. How could he refuse? Very well, Robert said. Write him. If Stark believes these tales, he'll ask my leave, though I know full well he'd march without it. Ned Stark's camp at Moonsgrave Ford bustled with the fervor of a war not yet joined. Smiths mended mail, boys fetched buckets brimming with river water for horses, and banners of direwolf grey snapped alongside the trout of River Run and the crowned black stag. Ned himself knelt in the muddy hush of dawn, sharpening ice, the great sword of House Stark, stone rasping rhythmically along Valyrian edge. Each drag of whetstone seemed to call memories from the steel. His father's voice at the last tourney they'd shared. His brother's laughter the hour before. Wrath set fire to King's Landing's gate. A soft tread behind him. A raven, my lord. Jory Castle proffered the tube. Ned straightened, wiped blade and brow, and pried the seal. Wax of deepest night. Stamp of a clenched fist. His breath caught. Ice slid into its scabbard. Ned read the scroll once, twice, before meeting Jory's eye. Saddle 2 horses, we ride at dusk. Tell Robert I must answer an older oath before I can swear this new one to the end. But, my lord, Jory began, then halted. He had seen the seal too. Ned stepped from his pavilion, the morning crisp, frost feathers across the grass. The camp still stretched toward war, unaware the world behind them might already be unmaking. He found Robert strapping mail across his barrel chest. You look as solemn as a septon, Stark, Robert said, meeting his gaze. Is it Castle Black? It is. I must go. Never? Robert's expression softened beneath his black curls. I gave Aaron leave to send men. You think I'd deny the wall Ned Stark's sword? Ride. Take whomever you trust. Ned bowed his head in gratitude. I'll return before the snows seal the passes. See that you do. Robert clapped him on the shoulder, a blow that would bruise lesser men. And bring me a story or two. Gods know rebellion breeds enough grim tales. I could use one of ice and wonder. Thus began the fracture. The North lost its air for a season. The Stormlands their quiet voice of reason. And 1,000 threads of fate twisted to court the unknown. Ned rode with 40 men. Stout Karstark lancers, tall umbers who drank from horn and laughed at death, 2 maesters sworn to study the wall's runes. They crossed the neck under gray skies that spit sleet in place of rain, ferried across the weeping water where reeds shivered like brittle spears, and emerged onto the King's Road while the holdfasts whispered of heavier colds, gathering sooner than seasons foretold. Every league north saw new portents. Frozen ponds where summer carp slept beneath glassy prisons, herds of elk stumbling south in dusty panic. And once a child's doll propped against a milepost, its cloth face shredded, black stitches trailing as though something had plucked at it idly in passing. On the 17th night, camped beside the long barrow, Benjen Stark, spurred, foam-lipped through the dark, snow crusting his shoulders. Younger brother and sworn Night's Watch Ranger, Benjen had ridden hard from the Shadow Tower's watchfires straight to the King's Road. Ned rose from his bedroll, cloak swirling. "What news?" Benjen's eyes shone wild in torchlight. "The wall bleeds sugar snow, cracks like thunder. Men vanish from the night patrol without scream or spoor. Corgia digs tunnels in the ice and finds them empty, the runes peeled raw. And the dead," Benjen swallowed. "They walk." Silence devoured the camp. Warriors who could whistle while charging pike lines stared as if named to die. Ned laid a hand on his brother's shoulder. "Tell me everything." Not far south, in the vaulted libraries of Old Town, Archmaester Valar thumbed a brittle parchment older than Valyria. It spoke of a time when the wall's spells were woven anew each generation by the gathered kings of the realms. A binding ceremony requiring 3 sacrifices: a sword of dragonfire, a crown of weirwood amber, and a vein of black stone carved from the Earth's wand. Valar's candle guttered green. Wildfire burned in the sconce, gift of the Pyromancer's Guild for his research. He dipped quill and scrawled margin notes, realizing with a chill that the last such renewal occurred 200 years ago, when Aegon the Conqueror's dragon still took wing. With Dragonsteel lost, who now could forge the chain again? Urgent knocks split the quiet. A novice in soot-speckled robes thrust a folded map at the Archmaester. "A raven from Eastwatch," he gasped. Valar unfurled the note. 2 words, ink-smeared as if the quill had snapped. "Help us!" The seal was crusted with frost. In King's Landing, Aerys the Targaryen, not yet dubbed the Mad King by chronicles, though his pyromancers whispered such behind closed doors, paced his throne room barefoot, toenails cracked, hair knotted. He sniffed the air as though drawn by scents none other could detect, muttering of dark shapes, slithering beneath his floors. When Grand Maester Pycelle spoke of the raven's tidings, Aerys shrieked, delighted. "Let the north freeze! The cold will creep into Lord Stark's marrow and shatter him like glass." Yet for all his contempt, the king ordered stockpiles of wildfire rushed north along the King's Road under cloak of night. Better, he mused, to drown the wall in green flame than lose his throne to more than rebels. At Castle Black, the days shortened to knife slivers. Corgula's men skirmished nightly now, black-clad silhouettes against drifting blue luminescence in the pines. Sir Waymar Royce, the last scion of a junior Vale house, vanished beyond the White Tree with 2 companions. When the searchers found them, they lay upon the snow in postures of calm repose, yet their throats were a rimaged ruin, and their eyes twin crystals of milk opacity. The corpses rose at dusk, silent but for the creak of frozen sinew, and only dragonglass daggers thrust through skull and spine could still them anew. Dragonglass grew scarce. Aloft above the old library was ransacked for arrowheads dating to the Dawn Age, each chipped shard precious as rubies. Brothers argued over who deserved the next hafted point. Many bore wounds from friendly fists before the Night's Watch toll rang. The runic crypt below Kingsgate Tunnel, once guarded by no more than a rusty iron lock, now held wrought steel bars and 4 Mashigarm stewards. Within, the heart rune that anchored the wall's oldest magic pulsed erratically, wan as a dying ember. Maester Harmon poured oils of myrrh and mandrake over the glyph, reciting charms in tremulous Valyrian. But the rune flickered out, coughing wisps of gray. Ned Stark arrived under storm clouds bruised purple. His 40 men stumbled through the outer yard, half eye-blind with fatigue. Horses lathered to salt crusts. Bells clanged, not triumph, but alarm. For 3 wights had breached the lich yard by North Mail Gate moments earlier, and slain the duty cook before axes severed their limbs. Bones charred on pyres as Ned dismounted. He embraced Corgyle and Benjen in turn. The Lord Commander stood hollow-eyed, his cloak smelling of scorched leather. "You came," he murmured. "Always," Ned answered. He toured the ramparts, listened to every account, studied the tattered warding glyphs. Snow fell in strange spirals, each flake a needle of glimmering glass. When his glove brushed a drifting bank, the snow hissed, vapor rising as though the ice itself could no longer stand its own chill. Ned wrote 3 letters that night, one to Robert, urging swift aid of fire and faith, one to John Arryn, begging grain, steel, and every alchemist who could brew flame resistant to cold wind, and one to his betrothed, Caitlin, counseling bravery and the possibility he might never ride home. Then he strode to the old Godswood, little more than a ragged garden clinging to a sheltered lee of the wall, and knelt before the stunted heart tree. Red sap trickled like blood from its bark. He prayed without words, thought of Brandon's fiery pride, of Lyanna's vanished laughter, of his father's calm eyes gone sudden wide at the moment of strangulation. And he made a vow. Should the wall fall, he would stand upon the breach and hold it even should every bone within him freeze to dust. The old gods gave no answer, but the wind shifted, bearing faint notes of music, pipes and strange strings, and a smell like roses blooming under snow. Ned stood, heart hammering. On the wall's crest, lights of cold sapphire drifted down the stairs in silent procession. Men shouted, arrows arced uselessly. For each missile that struck one blue-lit phantom dissolved to mist, only to reform yards away. Ned drew ice. The blade caught torchlight and drank it. He planted his feet beside Corgyle, Mallister, Benjen, and a dozen half-frozen brothers of the Watch. Together, they faced the spectral host, gliding closer. Snow whispered beneath the phantom's feet, yet left no prints. "Hold," Ned called, voice calm as iron. Silence replied, followed by a single note like crystal shattering as the lead phantom raised a sword curved and colorless as spun moonlight. Where the blade passed, the very air shrank in on itself, frost forming patterns of roses and crowns intertwined. The wall's magic failed in an instant, too fast for heartbeats. Runes guttered and died, ice groaned, and the colossal rampart shivered, mortar splitting along seams of ageless sorcery. A crack zigzagged upward from the base, unleashing a roar that drowned the brothers' screams. The northern face sheared, a river of shattered blue tumbling into the abyss. Wind lashed like a whip. Benjen lunged, dragging Ned backwards as a block of ice the size of a holdfast crashed where they'd stood. The walkway beneath Mallister gave way. He fell with arms pinwheeling, vanished in the snow spume. When the air cleared, a gap yawned where once the wall had stood unbroken. A wound wide enough for 10 mammoths abreast. Rind edges weeping slush. Through that breach rolled a mist alive with faint glimmers, and shapes walked within, tall, deathly graceful, eyes burning glacial fire. The others had come, heralded not by winter, but by winter undone. Word of the walls sundering raced faster than ravens. Dreams turned prophetic. Priests of Arlor woke screaming of a cold that devoured flame itself. Septons knelt before silent gods, weeping that their parchments lied, and their faith measured nothing in this new scale of dread. In Riverrun, Lord Hoster Tully clutched his chest when his steward recited Ned Stark's message. He saw futures of river ice dappled with corpses bearing blue lantern eyes. He ordered his coffers emptied for grain and steel. The whispers claimed the crown would soon brand him traitor for funding rebels. In Sunspear, Doran Nymeros Martell read the tidings and gazed across leagues of sea and desert to a star contorted within the night. A pale comet trailing frostfire. He murmured to his guards, "The north bleeds, and the realm with it." And in Dragonstone, Lady Elia Martell, widow to Crown Prince Rhaegar, held her infant son Aegon beneath a tapestry of the last dragon. "You will rule a realm of peace," she whispered. Yet when she stepped to the window, spray from the sea of Dorne stung her cheeks like sleet despite the summer tide. She shuddered, turning away. Back at the breach, battle raged by arrow flame and obsidian blade. Ned led sorties along makeshift barricades of toppled ice. Every slain other dissolved into shards sharp enough to flint's flesh. Every wight that fell risked rising twice unless burned. Torches sputtered. Brothers shed tears that froze on lashes as they fought. 3 nights in, a war horn braided across the western horizon. Torches flared upon the King's Road. Robert Baratheon thundered north at the head of 2,000 Stormlanders, their sigil a blur of black antler against Goldfield. At his left rode Sir Jaime Lannister, golden arrogant, yet bearing his own reasons to flee the court, and at his right Lord Jon Arryn, stern as scripture. Wagons clattered behind bearing barrels sloshing sickly green. Wildfire. When Robert mounted the shattered wall and beheld the frozen tide shimmering beyond, his laugh died in his beard. "7 save us," he muttered. He turned to Ned. "I thought I rode north to chase off ghosts, old friend, but ghosts have teeth." Ned's smile was carved of fatigue. "Then we break their teeth. Hold until winter turns. Hold until dawn beyond dawn." Robert drew his warhammer, hefted its weight. "Then it's the gods' own luck we're stubborn men." So began the war within a war. While the South still bled over thrones and vows, the North stood against night itself. And as both conflicts entwined, ripples of choice lapped at every shore. Queens who would burn kingdoms to save their heirs, lords who would abandon oaths for colder truths, and dragons, long thought slain, whose bones perhaps remembered how to breathe fire. For when walls fail, legend awakens, and the songs of men find new verses written in frost and flame. Ka. Wind knifed through the breach with such ferocity that tongues of powder snow corkscrewed upward like pale worms seeking the moon. Ned Stark pressed a mailed shoulder against the shattered bulwark and stared into a night whose horizon glimmered an eerie cobalt, as though some invisible forge stoked frost fire beyond the haunted forest. The glow pulsed in time with distant horns too cold for brass, low notes that vibrated through bone and ice alike. Each blast summoned another wave of dead, their ranks swelling hour by hour until the no man's land before the wall looked like a field of reeds swaying in silent, murderous rhythm. Robert Baratheon crouched beside him, hammer propped across his knees, breath roaring white. A smear of dried blood crusted his cheek, cracked in a grin too weary for mirth. "They don't tire," he muttered, wiping snot and ice from his mustache. "Wish I could say the same." He tapped the head of his warhammer against the stone. "We hold until daylight, if daylight still remembers this cursed corner of the world. Then we try the wildfire." Ned flexed numb fingers. "Fire burns them, aye, but wildfire may consume half our own men if the wind turns. Half our men is better than all our men, better than all the realm." Ned. Further along the makeshift barricade, Benjen Stark rolled a fresh bundle of pitch-soaked linen around an iron bolt. Oil dripped from his gloves, oil pilfered from the beacons, the kitchens, any cask not already emptied for torches. At his signal, archers stooped, their quivers nearly bare, then rose in unison and let fly. Comets of orange lanced the dark. Some winked out in mid-flight, extinguished by unnatural chill. Others flared brighter upon impact, immolating 3, 4, 5 wights at a time. Yet for every corpse that collapsed in flames, 2 more advanced. Blue witchlight flickered behind the front ranks, and the singed remains convulsed upright, staggering forward again, bones glowing like hearth embers through cracked flesh. Maester Harmon shuffled along the rear line, pressing clay pots into trembling hands, wildfire sealed with wax. "Only when Lord Stark gives the word," he barked, though his voice trembled. "Not before, or we all roast." Atop the ruined stairwell, Lord Commander Corgiel surveyed the clash by lamplight. His great cloak streamed behind him like a banner of midnight, though most of its fur had burned away during an earlier assault. Mallister's fall had broken his ribs. Each breath whistled through cracked cartilage, but he refused to yield his post. Seeing Benjen's next flight sputter, he turned to the signal bell. What remained of it, hammered the rusted edge, and the clamor rose above the din. Once, twice. Below, a rush of black-cloaked builders, Mere carpenters yesterday, makeshift soldiers now, dragged forward sledges laden with ice blocks and timber. They braced the breach's inner lip, stacking a second wall behind the first, though everyone knew it bought heartbeats, not hours. From the east came the grinding crunch of wheels. John Aaron's siege wagons, retrofitted into rolling scorpions, trundled into position. Chains clanked as a trio of builders cranked the first arm into tension, its steel head fitted with a thick vial of wildfire suspended inside a wire cage. Aaron himself, pale in the moonlight, oversaw the sighting. "Aim low," he shouted. "Shatter them at the feet, force them to climb." He caught Ned's eye across the chaos and nodded. Ned lifted a gloved hand. "Wait." Robert followed Ned's gaze, wordless understanding passed. With a grunt, the Stag Lord stood, rolled his shoulders, and strode to the foremost barricade. "Stormlanders," he bellowed. "Shields forward. Hold this line while the High Lords dance." Laughter rippled among men dead on their feet, and they closed ranks. Robert planted his hammer's spike into the frosted timber, lifted his visor, and drank from a skin of sour red wine. When he lowered it, his grin had hardened to iron. A hush prickled Ned's nape. The horns beyond the forest cut off mid-note. Behind the enemy ranks a fresh figure coalesced, taller than the others, armored in what looked like interlocking plates of hoarfrost sculpted into razors. Its helm resembled an elongated shark skull, and its eyes burned a cleaner, deeper blue. With deliberate grace it strode to the fore, snow hissing away from its greaves. Around its waist, looped cords of braided sinew tethered the throats of 4 pale direwolves. The beasts' muzzles dripped slow strings of ice. They strained yet obeyed, fanatics on crystalline leashes. Ned felt ice lighten in his grasp. A trick of fear, perhaps. He stepped onto the improvised ramp. "Stand ready," he whispered. The White Knight, Other King, whatever title fit a nightmare, raised its gauntleted hand. The dead halted. Perfect stillness. Frost gathered at its fingertips, shaping into a spear of transparent dusk. It leveled the point toward Ned. A challenge. Robert snorted. "He likes you." "Someone always does." Ned vaulted the barricade before thought could dissuade him. Snow sponged his boots. The cold bit so deep his bones rang. Behind him, Robert roared disapproval, but Ned kept walking, sword tip brushing ice dust. 10 paces out he halted. The direwolf snarled, hackles bristling. The other advanced until a scant dozen yards separated them. No breath steamed from its helm. When it spoke, the sound chimed like icicles snapping. A tongue older than giants, hungering. Ned could not decipher the words, but their intent echoed inside his skull. Surrender, despair. Submit. His answer hummed in Valyrian steel. As ice rose, the direwolves lunged, cords slithering free. Ned sidestepped the first beast, letting its momentum carry it past. He pivoted, cleaving spine and skull in one blow. Blue flame guttered from the carcass as it crumbled. The second beast swerved, jaws clamping ices flat. Frigid agony surged up Ned's arms, but he twisted, drew a dragonglass dagger from his belt, and stabbed the wolf's eye. It burst to shards. The final 2 circled, yet the other flicked its wrist, recalling them. Its faceless helm inclined, measuring this mortal. On the wall, Benjen shouted something lost to wind. The scorpions loosed their first shot. A green glass bomb sailed, trailing sparks, and shattered in mid-air, impaled by an unseen missile of ice. Emerald droplets scattered, hissed, froze mid-fall. Ned braced. The other charged. Speed unnatural, blade a blur of polar starlight. Ice met it with a clang that sent crackles spidering along the Valyrian edge. Ned slipped on black ice but regained footing, parried a second stroke aimed for his throat. Sparks of frost bit his lashes. He drove forward, shoulder into plated chest. The impact felt like ramming marble. The enemy slid back 1 step, then pivoted, spear whirling overhead in a circle that sang polar discord. Ned ducked, felt a hiss shear a lock of hair. Their dance wove half-visible patterns in the flux of torchlight and moon. Every clash birthed sharp thunder, spilling sheets of hoarfrost across the field. Robert surged through the barricade, hammer swinging, Stormlanders screaming behind. The whites erupted, converging. A maelstrom of steel, ice, and flame blossomed. Ned caught a glimpse of Robert pulverizing two whites with one blow. Bones exploding into sleet. A patch of wildfire ignited near Aaron's scorpion, bathing men in sickly green. Shrieks rose as quick-thinking stewards shoved comrades into snowdrifts to smother flame. Steel clanged again. The other's spear locked beneath the fuller of ice, twisting, threatening to wrench the greatsword away. Ned clenched, tendons screaming. Benjen's voice rang, and dragon-glass arrows peppered the fiend's back, only to shatter against the ice plates. The creature threw Ned aside with impossible strength. He landed hard, ribs crunching. The other stalked forward, snow blooming crystalline beneath each step. Ned struggled upright, lungs aflame. Ice lay mere feet away, half buried in powder. He lunged, fingers brushing the hilt just as the spear thrust for his spine. A clang sang out. Robert's hammer intercepted, sending shards exploding. "I'll not have my best friend skewered alone," he boomed. He swung again. The other leapt backward, light as drifting ash. Ned staggered up beside him. "Hammer and sword," Robert growled. "Like the tourney at Bitterbridge." Ned nodded, spinning ice in a short diagonal guard. They advanced in tandem, Robert's heavy arcs forcing the other to sidestep. Ned's precise thrusts seeking seams in the frost mail. The creature parried one, two, glancing the third. Valyrian steel carved a glowing groove across its breastplate. For the first time, the other faltered. A horn sounded far behind, deep, resonant, from the far side of Castle Black's courtyard. Corgully's men cheered. Over the rampart thundered fresh riders, the inner reserves led by Sir Denys Mallister. Alive, though ribs bound tight, astride a shaggy Garan. He waved a black-winged banner, marked with a crimson sun. Behind him, a twin phalanx of pyromancers in copper masks carried iron tubes, slung on shoulder straps. From those tubes erupted jets of flame so fierce the snow hissed to vapor. The liquid fire, experimental, concocted aboard the wagons from wildfire and lamp oil, splashed across the advancing dead. Where droplets landed, whites dissolved, others retreated. Steam ghosts spiraled upward, but the wind betrayed them. A gale knifed from the west. Swirling aerosol flame back toward the defenders. Copper-masked alchemists screamed as fire clung to gauntlets and boiled flesh. Benjen shouted orders. Buckets of slush were hurled, frost shattered, men rolled. Half the pyromancers perished in their own inferno, but a corridor of melted snow smoked clear, buying precious breaths. Within that corridor, Robert and Ned pressed the other. Robert feinted a downward smash. When the creature raised its spear to block, Ned pivoted and drove ice point first into the gap beneath the right pauldron, slicing through translucent mail, flesh, and bone. The blade lodged halfway. Ned shoved deeper until ice crossguard kissed frozen armor. The other emitted a sound like split stone. It dropped the spear, clawed at the sword. But Robert swung his hammer in a brutal side arc, connecting with the fiend's helm. Shards exploded. The Uter's skull cracked open, disgorging a blizzard of blue sparks. Both dire wolves, still tethered, convulsed and burst like glassware cast onto flagstones. The shattered fragments melted to water, then evaporated, leaving only a puff of snow and a lingering odor of night-blooming flowers. The surviving dead reeled, several collapsed inert. An eerie hush blanketed the field. The glacier blue glow that had framed the enemy ranks dimmed, flickered, and died. Whites blinked uncertainly. Their cohesion depended on the other's will, and that will now lay in pieces across the frost. Many turned blindly, staggering away into the forest darkness. But the victory was incomplete. Along the horizon, 5 more azure flares ignited. Other commanders approaching. Ned, doubled over, wheezing, met Robert's eyes. "They have kings enough for every breach," he rasped. Robert wiped gore and frost from his brow. "Then we kill every last royal bastard tonight, or we die singing." Back atop the breach, Jon Arryn dispatched runners south to the Queen's Road with orders for